Charles talks about a Cardano restructure. Liqwid Finance is voting to steal funds from users. Iagon is working on institutional adoption for the whole ecosystem. Keep watching to find out more. Hey guys, another massive week, another circus in crypto. No fluff, no intros. We're just jumping straight into it, starting off with the charts. So as you can see in the last week, Bitcoin has more or less gone sideways. Ethereum has more or less gone sideways. Cardano has more or less gone sideways. But Midnight and Iagon have both gone down significantly against the USD. So now we'll look at the Cardano natives against ADA on Tap Tools. So we can see here, Night is down 10% in the last 24 hours against ADA, down 20% against ADA in the last week. World Mobile Token has more or less gone sideways in the last week. SNEC is down 8% in the last 24 hours and 6% in the last week. Iagon has gone down 5% in the last 24 hours and 15% in the last week. So one of the big news this week is Charles made an interesting video. It was about 1 hour long. It was talking about the current structure of Cardano with infrastructure, the utility, and the user experience and all that sort of a thing. I obviously have my own biases, and these are my points that I've taken away from the video and what I think about them. I encourage you to watch the video yourself to learn about what he's talking about and form your own opinions, and we can discuss it in the comments. Point number one, Charles talks about making large investments into projects, effectively taking a 10 to 30% share of projects, and then they get to oversee the project, ensure that you cut extra staff and align goals. So that means using Bitcoin, DeFi, and Midnight, and then the treasury gets a percentage of the revenue from purchasing ADA. So this is interesting. There's obviously two sides of this problem. This is addressing projects that use treasury funding and then leave. So thanks for the support. We appreciate it. We're now heading out, and this has been an ongoing issue. And Charles has alluded to some projects who have done this in the past. It also talks about projects that have failed. There are plenty of projects in Cardano that have rugged, that have failed to financial mismanagement, or have just taken funding and just left the ecosystem and have focused elsewhere. That's what that is addressing. However, I don't think it's a one size fits all solution. I genuinely think there are projects out there that are really succeeding and just need a little extra financial assistance, whether that be in the form of a loan or some other sort of financial situation. I don't think this would fit those sort of people. So the perfect example is Iagon, right? Obviously, I'm going to talk about Iagon. With Iagon, right, they just need this little extra financial assistance in the form of a loan for a little side quest that they're doing that is assisting the whole entire ecosystem. So I don't think the Pentad should be taking a share of their project, something that like this, right? They're not going anywhere. This is a post made by Nav last year, and Nav talks about the ways that the Iagon team has supported the ecosystem and all the products that they've used within the ecosystem. Now, this post came out August 2025, and I know for a fact that there are plenty of other projects that have been added to this list since then. Now, someone like Iagon, I don't think they're doing a runner. I don't think they're going to be taking funds, running and saying, thanks for your help. They've proven to the ecosystem that they're here for the long run. They've proven that they're here to support the ecosystem and use all the products. So someone like them, I feel like they should be getting a different deal, or at least a smaller deal where there's less of a share in the project. The second point that I want to talk about is Charles states that Cardano won't compete on cost, it won't compete on liquidity, and it won't compete on users. It will, however, compete on privacy, governance, tech such as liquid non-custodial staking, extended UTXO, and solving the blockchain trilemma. This is things that it will and will not do. Now he talks about something that it has to do. It has to win on utility, and it has to win on experience. He talks about how there's a really negative sentiment in the whole ecosystem, very toxic behavior, people being Debbie Downers, people just shitting on each other all the time. And it's true, it happens all the time. It happens every single day. And where do we go from here? How does this ecosystem mentality change? Will it always be a thing? Do we just need to ignore it? Or can we do something that meaningfully changes this sentiment and attitude? So with this attitude shift, Charles talks about engaging with projects and picking winners and losers. And he says that's an unfortunate reality of life. And he says it won't just come through their opinion. It will talk about who's performing, who's not performing, who's providing a certain product that's better, and going with that person who's providing a better product. I personally think that's a bit dangerous. That's just my opinion. I don't think in history that's been proven to work well. I think there is bias. And currently the Pentad is facing criticism for their biases and corruption. I think that's a bit murky water to be going into. What do you guys think about that? And finally, to round it all up, he's really pushing Midnight as the solution to all of these issues. So privacy, obviously Midnight. He's saying everyone should be aligned with Midnight, and that the sooner that everyone gets on board with Midnight in the Cardano ecosystem, the sooner Cardano wins. Now, there's two sides to this last point. One, has Charles created the winning ticket for the whole ecosystem? Does he genuinely believe that this will lead to the success of the whole entire ecosystem and that we should all just really get on with it and this will lead us to success? Or is he encouraging people to use his new project and that value and liquidity can shift that way? There's two sides of every coin. I think it's a fair argument to make. What do you guys think about that? Nav makes a post about this, stating that the community wants less control by the founding entities, not more. They've been proven to have inefficient and irresponsible spending, and passing that on to projects could be detrimental to them. So more control based on that will not be the ticket to success. This isn't just a lone opinion from Nav. If you look throughout the whole Twitter, many people are suggesting the same thing, that they don't want more control given to the pentad. They want less. They want more decentralization. So what do you think about that? Here is some positive news. Franklin Templeton has finally launched their ETF that includes ADA, called EZPZ. Now, this looks promising, and the way that they've formatted it looks really good. However, if you look at their Cardano allocation, it's actually one of the smaller ones. So obviously a good start, but they could do better. Well, we could do better, right? Here's another one of the big news pieces this week. Liqwid Finance is doing a mint swap. And by that, if you've been living under a rock, Liqwid Finance is currently putting up to vote to steal Midnight allocations to their liquidity providers. As I said for MintSwap, this is disgusting. This should not be up for a vote. The tokens that are provided by the liquidity providers are the liquidity providers' tokens. You shouldn't be voting to take their funds. It's not yours to be taking in the first place. So as you can see here, Dave X Crypto, he's made a few posts about this, and they clearly stated 100% of ADA would go towards the lenders, just like staking rewards, right? They've said this over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden they do 180, go back on their word, and they're putting it up for a vote. Disgusting. Remember this, right? Remember what MintSwap did. Remember what Liqwid Finance are doing, and choose wisely what dexes you're using. If people stop using these projects and their fees go down, they'll get the hint. They'll understand that this is unacceptable. Some other big news this week is Midnight has finally launched on Binance, making them the first Cardano native token, Cardano adjacent token on the Binance US website. Awesome news. Congratulations to the Midnight team. So now for just some quick commentary. Phil has received some instant karma. So if you don't know, Phil has been attacking Nav in the last week or two over USDCX and Nav's questions. He's been attacking Iagon, saying that they're patent trolls, and he's been attacking Iagon, stating that they shouldn't be complaining about someone going against their word. It wasn't a written contract, it was just their word. So I feel sorry for Phil. I genuinely do. He's worked on something. The Cardano Foundation have said that they will just be using it as a reference point, and instead they've gone 180 on that, and they've now copied it word for word and using his work and not even attributing the work he's done to him. Now, this is really disappointing, and this is another piece of evidence that the pentad should not be getting more control than they currently have. The Phil was a big voice against Iagon's patent, and he made fun of Iagon about the pentad going against their verbal agreement on the reimbursement. So now Phil has been a victim of the pentad doing a 180 on a verbal agreement, and he's been a victim of having his project not under a patent. Phil, I'm sorry, this is instant karma, but I do feel sorry for you. And as you see here, he says, like, can you not see why I would be upset over this? Just like Iagon last week, right? So some positive news. Mastercard has partnered with over 85 crypto native companies. Huge. This is huge news for the whole entire crypto space. But one interesting detail is one of those 85 crypto native companies is Fireblocks. Iagon is working on their integration with Fireblocks, which is what the Iagon team were seeking some reimbursement from the pentad for that they've done a 180 on. And the value and what this means for the ecosystem has only just gone up. Fireblocks now works with Mastercard. This is huge. This is a huge integration with huge potential. And for the pentad to not chip in for this is disappointing, really. I think it's up to the Cardano holders and the ecosystem to work together towards this. Now, you're not making a donation. It's not one-way traffic. It's a loan. So you're putting your Cardano into a loan, which is collateralized by Iagon's team funds. The only liquidation event is after the 2 years. If they don't pay it, their team fund allocation will be liquidated. So I made a whole video about this. You can watch my video, break it down in detail, what it means for everyone. Obviously, now we've got the added Mastercard integration, which is huge. But effectively, the point I want to get across is this is not a donation, right? You're putting your ADA in and you're going to be getting higher returns than your staked ADA. If you're looking to get more returns from your ADA, this is the place. And you're helping the ecosystem, which will in turn increase the value of your ADA in the long run. So look, we're talking about changing the mentality in the ecosystem, changing it from everyone being negative and shitting on each other to being positive. This is a really good start. This is something that helps the whole entire ecosystem and in turn also increases your returns instead of staking for something that's really safe because it's collateralized by the Iagon team's team fund. Okay, so something to think about. I genuinely think if you are holding ADA in the long term, you're staking in the long term, have a think about this. Don't need to put all of it in, just put a certain chunk in that you're happy to earn extra rewards. There's some more positive news. Atlas has finally launched their pre-sale event for their Atlas token. Now, I've previously made a video discussing what Atlas is and what they're doing, but effectively what they're doing is to provide liquidity to locked tokens. So they split tokens into the principal token and the yield-bearing token and providing a secondary market to those, which is awesome. Cardano has a lot of locked liquidity and unlocking that really adds fuel to the DeFi market of Cardano, which is something that isn't that exciting at the moment. So as of right now, they've currently raised 238,000 ADA with a maximum of 3 million ADA. So we're currently about 1/15 of the way there. So that's pretty cool. It's only been about 24 hours. So congratulations to the Atlas team. I'm really looking forward to see what comes of this and what they do. And finally, if you haven't seen it, I've had a little intro video interview powered by Cardano. He's an absolute gentleman. He interviews a lot of people in the ecosystem, trying to promote them, trying to get some positive energy in the ecosystem and talking about what everyone's doing. I'm looking forward to our next video. We're going to have a bit of a longer interview. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. And I highly recommend you follow him because he's interviewed some really interesting people and you get to learn a lot about them and what they're doing. So that wraps up this video. I hope you've learned something new. If you have, give me a follow on X and subscribe to me on YouTube. And if you have any feedback or questions, be sure to drop a comment or a like. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great week.